I, 28 female, am the younger sister to Sarah, 30 female, the golden child of our family. That term might sound dramatic, but it's the only way to describe the dynamic. From the moment we were kids, Sarah could do no wrong. She was beautiful, confident, and charismatic, the kind of person everyone gravitates toward. My parents adored her, and their pride in her was impossible to miss. As for me, I was the quieter, more introverted sibling. I wasn't shy, but I didn't have the same dazzling personality that Sarah did. I was content with my books, hobbies, and close circle of friends. Unfortunately, in my family, that meant I was often overlooked. Growing up, everything seemed to revolve around Sarah. If we both had events on the same day, my parents would always prioritize hers. If I achieved something, it would be acknowledged briefly before the spotlight returned to her. Family vacations were planned around Sarah's preferences, and even our home decor was influenced by her tastes. The favoritism wasn't just subtle, it was blatant. My parents would gush about Sarah's accomplishments to anyone who would listen. When I achieved something, it was met with a polite, "That's nice, dear," before the conversation shifted back to Sarah. I learned to lower my expectations and find validation elsewhere. The only people who truly saw me were my grandparents. They noticed the imbalance and made a conscious effort to support me. They attended my school plays when my parents didn't, celebrated my achievements, and always made me feel valued. Without them, I think I would have felt completely invisible in my own family. 2 years ago, I met Jack, the love of my life. He was the first person who made me feel like I was enough just as I was. When he proposed, I was overjoyed. For the first time, I felt like I had something that was completely mine, something special that even Sarah couldn't overshadow. When I shared the news with my family, I expected at least a little excitement. Instead, I got indifference. My mom said, "Oh, that's nice, but aren't you rushing into things?" and changed the subject. My dad barely acknowledged it, and Sarah looked outright uncomfortable. Later, I overheard her telling my mom that it felt wrong for me to get married before her. Shortly after Jack proposed, I moved in with him. I decided to keep my distance from my parents because I didn't want them to ruin the happiest times of my life planning the wedding with the man I love. It wasn't out of anger, but self-preservation. I wanted to focus on building my life with Jack, without feeling the constant sting of being second best. When the big day finally arrived, I was nervous but excited. Everything had been planned, and while I was hurt that my parents and Sarah had been so uninvolved, I was excited to see them on my wedding day. The ceremony was about to start when I realized my parents and sister weren't there. At first, I thought they were running late, so I stepped aside and called them. My mom picked up, and when I asked if they were on their way, she replied coldly and angrily, "What? We never received an invitation to your wedding." I was stunned. I reminded her that I had sent their invites months ago, and even confirmed with them that they'd received them. But she doubled down, accusing me of being the one who forgot to send it. Sarah chimed in on speakerphone, saying, "It's okay, we understand if it was just an oversight." Their words felt like a punch to the gut. My parents and sister weren't late. They had no intention of coming. They had decided to skip one of the most important days of my life, and instead of admitting it, they blamed me. I hung up the phone in tears, but I didn't want their absence to ruin my day. My grandparents, who had always been my biggest supporters, stepped in to walk me down the aisle. Jack's family embraced me with open arms, filling the emotional void left by my parents and Sarah. The ceremony was beautiful, but their absence loomed over it like a dark cloud. I kept wondering why they would choose to hurt me this way, and if I had done something to deserve it. A few weeks after the wedding, my grandparents told me the truth. My parents and Sarah had received the invites to my wedding. They just had deliberately chosen not to come. The reason? They didn't want to upset Sarah. My mom felt it would be too hurtful for Sarah to watch me get married before her, because I'm the younger sister and my dad went along with it. Sarah, of course, didn't object. They decided it was easier to skip my wedding entirely than deal with Sarah's fragile ego. Hearing this broke me. My parents had prioritized Sarah's feelings over supporting me on one of the most important days of my life. I never touched this subject with them or Sarah again. I just kept distant from them. Fast forward to now, and Sarah is finally getting married. My parents are treating her wedding like the event of the century. According to my grandparents, they've been involved in every detail, from helping her pick the venue to organizing a lavish bridal shower. The contrast to how they treated my wedding couldn't be more glaring. It was painful to hear that when they didn't even bother to attend mine. But then my grandparents surprised me with a gift. A trip to Paris for me and them, scheduled for the same day as Sarah's wedding. They said it was their way of making up for how my parents had treated me. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want to seem petty or vindictive. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't about Sarah. It was about me finally feeling valued and celebrated. So, I accepted. The trip was amazing. Paris had always been on my bucket list, and experiencing it with my grandparents made it even more special. We visited iconic landmarks, indulged in incredible food, and created memories I'll cherish forever. I posted a few photos on social media during the trip, not even thinking about the timing, and that's when the backlash began. The morning after Sarah's wedding, my phone was flooded with angry messages from my parents. They accused me of ruining Sarah's big day and manipulating and poisoning my grandparents' minds. My mom called me selfish and said I had done it on purpose to hurt Sarah and out of revenge. Sarah called me, but I didn't pick up the phone because I knew it's just going to ruin my mood and the trip. I completely ignored them and decided to cut them out of my life completely because I just had enough. Since then, my parents and Sarah have blocked me on social media. My grandparents insist I did nothing wrong, and Jack has been incredibly supportive. But I can't shake the guilt. Was I wrong to skip my sister's wedding and go on the trip with my grandparents? OP's parents and sister have been treating OP as an afterthought her entire life, and it's about time OP stood up for herself. Skipping OP's wedding was unforgivable, and they didn't even have the decency to admit the truth. They lied and blamed OP instead. The Paris trip was a gift from OP's grandparents, and OP shouldn't feel guilty for accepting it. OP's sister and parents need to take a long, hard look at their priorities instead of trying to guilt-trip OP. They all just got a taste of their own medicine. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Wow, I can't imagine how painful this must have been for you. Your parents skipping your wedding and then blaming it on you is heartbreaking. It's clear they've spent years catering to your sister's ego at your expense. And honestly, it's not your job to keep walking on eggshells for their sake. Your grandparents sound amazing, and I'm glad they were there to support you and give you the trip to Paris. You're not the one ruining the relationship here. They are. I'm going to be honest. I don't think you're an a-hole, but I can understand why your parents and sister feel the way they do. From their perspective, the timing of the Paris trip and the photos might have felt like you were taking a jab at Sarah's wedding, even if that wasn't your intention. That said, they skipped your wedding entirely and lied about it, so it's hard to feel sympathy for them. Maybe you can have a conversation to clear the air, but they need to own their actions too. Your parents and sister are the real a-holes here. They didn't just skip your wedding. They gaslit you into thinking it was your fault. Now they're furious that you went on a trip that happened to coincide with Sarah's wedding? Talk about hypocritical. You didn't owe them anything. If they want to mend the relationship, they need to start by apologizing and showing you the respect you've always deserved. Until then, enjoy your memories of Paris guilt-free. I, 46 male, am married to my second wife, 44 female. We've been married for 11 years, dating for 15. She has 2 kids from her first marriage, who are now 24 female and 19 male. Their dad wasn't involved much, and I practically raised them with my wife, especially the 19 male. I had a child with my first wife, a boy, but he died from leukemia when he was 3 years old. My wife and I divorced shortly after that. Each year on the anniversary of his death, we still get together, visit his grave and have a cup of coffee together, and just talk about him. This year, my stepdaughter is getting married 2 days after the anniversary of my son's death. I will walk her down the aisle, and I am super happy about it. I won't be attending the lunch 2 days before the wedding, though, with both families of the soon-to-be married couple, because I will be spending that day with my ex-wife. I am attending the rehearsal dinner the day before the wedding. The same people will be there and at the lunch. When I told this to my wife and stepdaughter, they both got very, very upset about it. My wife said I'm an a-hole for not prioritizing our daughter over a trip down memory lane with my ex. And my stepdaughter said that I disappointed her now, just like her bio dad always did. My stepson is on my side, saying I will attend everything else, pay for the wedding, and have been very involved in all the planning and everything. For some info, the wedding is in 3 weeks, and the lunch was planned a couple of days ago. It wasn't the original plan. The rest was arranged months ago. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Visiting your son's grave is important to you and has been for years. Not only that, but your family knows the day you do this, has known this for a long time, and scheduled the event on that day anyway. They should have expected this. As for your stepdaughter's reaction goes, it's unfair to say you are disappointing her like her bio dad did. She is comparing one day to a lifetime. That is ridiculous and makes her sound like a spoiled brat. Your stepson is right. You are attending and paying for everything else. They can allow you this one absence. If your stepdaughter doesn't like it, she can pay for everything herself. Then she can really know how it feels to be disappointed. Not the a-hole. Your wife and daughter are a-holes. To say that your tradition of recognizing the loss of your young son is just a trip down memory lane with your ex is unbelievably cruel. Expecting you to drop long-standing plans just because she planned a last-minute event at the same time is selfish. Saying that everything you have done for her in the past and everything you are doing for the wedding is meaningless if you miss this lunch is manipulative and entitled. For context, my ex and I still live together with our 2 kids. Virus shutdowns permanently shut down the daycare we used, and our only option to provide for the kids was to live together again, so I could watch the kids while he works. This hasn't been an issue for us. On to the actual issue. My ex has been seeing someone for a bit. I mind my own business, so I don't know much about her. I just know that he says they're not very serious right now, and they're just seeing where things go. Beyond that, I'm clueless. Anyway, August 15th was the anniversary of one of the babies my ex and I had lost. On the anniversary of the lost dates for those other babies we struggled to carry to term, he buys me flowers. 2 red roses for the 2 kids we have, and 1 white rose for each lost. Mother's Day and their lost dates are when he buys them. He came home with the flowers the other day and a small stuffed bear he had custom made using the hospital blanket from the birth. However, today I received a message from his partner that she didn't like him buying me flowers and saying a lot of rude things. It ended with her demanding I throw away the flowers and tell my ex to never buy more. I refused and then blocked her. I told my ex what happened and we didn't talk much before he left for work. He seemed angry, but I don't know at who. I told my friend, venting because I was really angry, and she says that she sees why his partner would be upset. She claims his partner has the right to demand what she did and insinuated that I only care about the flowers because of the old romantic connection. She says I should throw them away like his partner wants. Am I really in the wrong for not wanting to get rid of them? Being jealous of your partner acknowledging their deceased children is super gross behavior. Not the a-hole. This girlfriend is out of line. Not the a-hole. And your friend's an idiot. If my partner gave his ex flowers as a commemoration of their deceased children, I'd think he was lovely and empathetic and be glad I was with a decent human being. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. If his partner has an issue, she should be talking to him like a grown adult, not attacking you. It's kind of weird territory for a relationship, dating someone who is living with their ex and the kids and buys flowers. But that's a them issue and not a you problem. If she wants to set boundaries, she needs to do it with the person she's actually dating. I understand it's weird too. It's why I try my best to mind my business. I don't want any of his new partners to feel like I'm an issue. We just co-parent together super well, and this living situation has been a huge benefit to our kids, mentally and financially. I did ask my ex to talk to her about coming to him about problems, especially since I blocked her, but we really didn't get to talk much before he had to leave for work. He just said, "I'll handle it," and that was that. I'm still not sure what that meant. But I do know that my ex is very strict about how people interact with me, because he says that he needs to respect me as a parent. So I'm leaning toward him being angry at her, and not me right now. Update. My ex texted me a little bit ago from work and apologized for not talking to me before work. He said he was just worried he'd misdirect his anger at me if he talked to me, because he was furious and hurt. We're going to talk about it more when he gets home from work, but he said he broke up with her and that he's not planning to give her any second chance. The most he said was that he would never stay with someone who disrespected the memory of his children and who would disrespect him by going behind his back like she did. For now, that's all I know, because he only gets short breaks at work. Update 2. My ex got home from work this morning and told me what happened. He works with this person, so he confronted her at work before they clocked in. They usually would sit in her car before work. He told her that he was angry about what she did, that it was disrespectful to him, to me, and to the memory of our children. He reminded her that he explicitly told her that things like that weren't okay to do, and that if she had any issues, she should have come to him about them, not me. She said it was disrespectful to her that he would give me flowers, and the least he could do was buy her some too. He said he wasn't going to buy her flowers when they didn't lose any children together, and explained that the flowers are about the losses we suffered. I guess she doubled down on it. He says he was open to trying to resolve the issue at first, but that she made a comment during the argument about our first 2 losses not being real losses, because they were barely even babies anyway. They were at 15 weeks and 18 weeks, compared to the 30 weeks of our last, from what his friend said, who also works with him and stops in after work each morning. He's never seen my ex so angry in his life, which is saying something, since they've been friends for 12 years. He told her he'd never view the loss of our first 2 any differently than our last. She had no right to tell him whether the loss was real or not, and that she was being a horrible person. He proceeded to tell her they were done, because he couldn't be with someone who would disrespect his children, himself, or the mother of his children in the way she has. He then told her to stay away from him for the rest of the night at work, because he didn't want to snap out on her. Because he was so angry and had a lot of things he wanted to say, but had held in. He says he ignored all her excuses and just reiterated himself that they were over and he would never date someone who disrespected everyone he cares about. They haven't spoken since, and he apparently plans on keeping it that way. So, basically, I lost my brother, 25, due to him not getting a kidney transplant in time. Now, this isn't going to be me blaming my sister, 27, for not giving up a kidney. Our father and grandmother both had issues with their kidneys. Grandma died, Dad got a transplant. So, no one in Dad's side was asked to even get tested just in case. But my sister, forever the attention seeker, made sure to call me, 23 female, and my older brother, 30 male, out multiple times for not getting tested, of our BS excuses, kids. She was a match and lapped up all the attention, till it came time. Then she changed her mind. My brother Dylan, the one who died, forgave her, and no one else held it against her. She used my brother and his 4-year-old son for social media attention, posting pictures of him in his last days, something he wouldn't want, starting fights with his ex-girlfriend for leaving him. He ended the relationship due to his health. I kept away from her because I knew I couldn't keep my mouth shut, literally blocked her off everything when she held a "pity me he died because I was selfish" party on Facebook. The day of his funeral, today, she gave an Oscar-worthy performance, as in screaming it's her fault till someone give her attention, videoing parts of the funeral and making comments about kicking out his ex for leaving him. But what I couldn't stand anymore was when she started upsetting my nephew by telling him he'll never see his dad again, and it was all her fault, begging him to forgive her and making false promises. So while she had my sobbing nephew at his dad's picture, I walked up to her. I'm guessing my aunt knew what I was going to do because she got my nephew off my sister and walked off. I literally got in her face and screamed, "Get the duck out and look for pity somewhere else." She broke down and tried to say I was doing it because she never gave the kidney. At this stage, my living brother told her that no one cares about that. Everyone was just disgusted by everything she did. Everything stopped when our parents got involved. My mother is upset at me and refuses to talk to any of us because we made a scene. And my sister's girlfriend told me my sister was having a hard time as it is. Now she thinks we all hate her. Right now I do. Not the a-hole. I'm sorry for your loss. Clearly your brother must have been an amazing human to be able to forgive her for backing out. I'm also surprised no one kicked her out of the funeral earlier. I'm glad you stepped in while she was talking to your nephew. She clearly has issues going on. Everyone sucks here. Your mom is right. All of you made a scene at your brother's funeral and made it about yourselves. Your poor mom. However, I completely understand your point of view, but still, not the time or place. Not the a-hole. Your sister did help cause your brother to die. She could have helped him, but changed her mind at the last minute. While she can be forgiven, this pity tour she was on was unacceptable. She was being narcissistic, and at one of the worst places to be narcissistic. Your reaction was a lot, but everyone grieves differently. About 6 years ago, I, 30 female, was going through a pretty awful time and struggling with depression, and a lot of outside pressure from family, my studies, work, etc. I met a guy at a bar and had a one-night stand. A short while later, I found out I was pregnant. Despite my family's thoughts, I decided to have the baby. Yes, I was prepared to be a single mom, but I still wanted to find the baby daddy and let him know, which I did when I was about 6 months along. I told him everything, and that he didn't have to be a part of the baby's life if he didn't want to, but surprisingly, he actually said yes, that he's willing to be a father. So my little girl Daisy, 5 female, was born, and we agreed to co-parent. He passed away in a car crash when Daisy was 3. So a few days ago, my sister Sarah, 28 female, and her husband had a potluck. Daisy accidentally spilled juice on the rug. I wasn't there because I was helping arrange the food on the table. Someone else told me that Daisy spilled juice, and Sarah was with her, so I went to see what was going on. Sarah was telling her that she's a big girl now, and she needs to prove it. Daisy looked upset. I asked Sarah what she was talking about. She said that Daisy spilled juice, but that's okay. She's an unwanted child, so she doesn't have the proper discipline. Mind you, Daisy was right there when Sarah was saying this stuff. I got mad and said it was an accident and I'll clean it up, and both me and Daisy apologized. But she has no reason to say things like that in front of her. I sent Daisy to another room so she wouldn't hear. Sarah said that she's just speaking the truth, and neither me nor her dad really wanted her. I blew up, saying that we did want her after we found out about her, and her dad was also a loving and caring father until the day he died. I then told her to duck off, and that me and Daisy never want to see her again. We left after that. My mom messaged me later to find out what happened, and she said I overreacted. Sarah didn't even get mad at Daisy for spilling juice, and I went way too far. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. What kind of monster is your sister? Your mom even, for not seeing that behavior as horrible. I would absolutely keep your decision to be low contact or no contact. Your daughter doesn't need that kind of negativity in her life. Not the a-hole. Your sister needs to learn the difference between unwanted and unplanned, neither of which are appropriate to call a child, especially a child not their own. Wow, your sister is awful. I heard someone say truth without compassion is brutality. Your sister purposefully tried to hurt a 5-year-old child. I would be no contact with my sister forever unless she humbly and sincerely apologized. Not the a-hole. You protect your child. I, 31 female, have a wonderful 7-year-old daughter I would go to the moon and back for, and have been supporting her as a single parent. My ex, 31 male, hasn't really been in her life since we split when she was 2.5. He hasn't paid child support for the last 4 years and has sporadically visited her at his parents' home when she visits. He says he will visit her while hyping her up, and then not show up, only to give BS excuses on why he never showed up, leaving her devastated and upset that he didn't spend time with her. He has blamed me for everything under the sun, which I can prove to not be true. For example, he blames me for not calling him so he can video chat with her on my days off, when he doesn't even attempt to try in the first place on his days off. He even stated he couldn't pay child support because he was rebuilding his car. My ex had seen multiple girls in the past 4 years, but has been seeing this current girlfriend for about a year at this point, and she has a 3-year-old daughter. He shunted our daughter to be his girlfriend's daughter's father, doing father-daughter activities, like going to the pumpkin patch, holidays, and spending time with the 3-year-old. He forgot his own daughter's birthday for 2 years in a row, and possibly for a 3rd time this year. His family and I heard a rumor that the girlfriend was pregnant 3 or 4 months ago. His parents wanted to be in the baby's life, and I was ecstatic that my daughter would have a half-sibling, since I don't want more kids. He vehemently denied she was pregnant, and we left the subject alone. Well, about 10 minutes before I started my shift, I was told and shown that my ex's girlfriend had their baby girl that morning. I was livid. He had lied to all of us that the baby was coming, and severed whatever trust with him we had left. I started looking at family attorneys in my city because I know this will get messy. He wants parental rights without having to lift a finger or pay child support. I want full custody since our daughter lives with me full-time. Before people ask, no, he's not in our daughter's life unless he wants others to see he's being a good dad. The last time he visited her, she didn't recognize him at all. Yes, I have filed for child support several times in the past, only for them to die in court, because he didn't want to sign the paperwork. I'm at my wit's end with him. I vented to a couple of close friends and close co-workers about this, and the majority are saying I'm the a-hole because I should be excited for the new baby, and that with the new baby, he won't have the funds for child support. Am I the a-hole if I go through with getting a family attorney and serving him papers while he's caring for a newborn? Not the a-hole. In fact, you'd probably be the a-hole if you let this keep happening. The courts will either terminate his rights or force him to comply with child support, visitation. Win-win. I don't know why people think getting a parent's rights terminated is the end-all solution to these kinds of situations. A sitting judge is not going to terminate a parent's rights for simply being a deadbeat. The state wants to recoup the money they dish out for that kid. How will that happen if rights are terminated? The parent would need to be negligent or put the child in extreme danger. I'd go with having the a-hole's wages garnished. Not the a-hole, but you should have done this from the very beginning. You need to retain an attorney now, and you need to remove yourself emotionally from him. His girlfriends, kids, whatever, are none of your business. Your only focus needs to be on what's right for your daughter, or you're trapping yourself emotionally in a relationship with him when it literally doesn't exist. I, 36 female, grew up in the shadow of my older sister, Emily, 38 female. From as early as I can remember, Emily had one goal in life, to marry rich. While other kids were dreaming about becoming astronauts or doctors, Emily was fantasizing about mansions, luxury cars, and designer clothes. She wasn't subtle about it either. By the time she was a teenager, she openly declared, "I'll never work a day in my life because my husband will take care of me." My parents would laugh it off, chalking it up to her being a dreamer. They never saw it as a problem, but even as a kid, I thought her mindset was odd. While Emily obsessed over wealth and status, I was the complete opposite. I found joy in simple things: reading, exploring nature, and building meaningful friendships. I valued love, trust, and mutual respect over material possessions. My parents always treated Emily's dreams as ambitious, and mine as naive. As we got older, Emily's fixation on wealth only grew. She wasn't interested in school or developing a career. She treated relationships like stepping stones to the life she wanted. Every boyfriend she dated was chosen based on his financial prospects. She'd dump anyone who didn't measure up without a second thought. Despite our differences, Emily and I were close in our younger years. I admired her confidence and determination, and I think she appreciated my quieter, steadier presence. But as we transitioned into adulthood, our values began to clash in ways that strained our relationship. While I pursued my degree and worked hard to establish a career, Emily focused entirely on finding her golden ticket. She frequented high-end social circles, attended events she had no genuine interest in, and made connections solely to meet wealthy men. Her life felt like one long audition for the role of a trophy wife. I chose a different path. I wanted a relationship built on trust and shared values, not financial convenience. That decision eventually brought Ryan into my life. In my early 20s, I met Ryan. Ryan came from an old money family, but his wealth wasn't what attracted me. I loved his sense of humor, his ambition, and his generous and kind heart. When I introduced Ryan to my family, I expected them to be happy for me. Instead, Emily's reaction was unsettling. She wasn't just interested in meeting Ryan. She was intensely interested. Her eyes lit up in a way that made my stomach twist, and she immediately began peppering him with questions about his family, his job, and their wealth. At first, I brushed it off as her being overly friendly and Emily being her typical self. But over time, her behavior became harder to ignore. As the months went on, I started noticing Emily inserting herself into my relationship with Ryan. She'd show up uninvited when Ryan and I were spending time at my parents'. She began attending events she wouldn't normally care about, conveniently running into Ryan without me. One day, I went to Ryan's apartment to surprise him, only to find Emily sitting on his couch. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, but the atmosphere was too intimate. My heart sank. Ryan confessed that he had been seeing Emily behind my back. Emily didn't deny it. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "I can't help it if I want more out of life." Her words hit me like a slap. She framed her betrayal as if it were logical, even justifiable, because Ryan's wealth made him a better match for her. I was devastated, not just because I had lost Ryan, but because I had lost my sister. Within a year, Emily and Ryan were married. I cut ties with both of them, unable to stomach what they did to me. The years that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Losing Ryan was painful, but losing Emily felt even worse. I kept replaying her words, wondering if she was right. Was I not good enough? Eventually, I realized their actions said more about them than they did about me. I threw myself into my career, surrounded myself with supportive friends, and slowly rebuilt my life. Then, in my early 30s, I met James. James was incredibly successful. He owns a major company. He was also humble, kind, and down to earth. His wealth was never something he flaunted. To him, it was just a byproduct of his hard work. We connected on a deeper level than I had ever experienced before. James valued me for who I was, not for what I could offer him. For the first time in years, I felt truly loved and appreciated. When James proposed, he gave me a vintage engagement ring that took my breath away. It wasn't just beautiful, it was thoughtful, reflecting everything he knew I loved. But then, 15 years after, mine and Emily's paths crossed again at a mutual friend's wedding. I hadn't seen her since she married Ryan, and I wasn't sure what to expect. As I mingled at the reception, I noticed Emily walking toward me. She looked different, still beautiful, but there was a sharpness to her demeanor that hadn't been there before. "Wow, is that really you?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake warmth. "Hi, Emily," I replied, keeping my tone polite but distant. We exchanged small talk for a few minutes. She asked if I was still single, her tone a mix of curiosity and judgment. Then her gaze dropped to my hand, where my engagement ring sparkled under the light. Her eyes widened, and I watched as she subtly scanned my jewelry and outfit, trying to assess its worth. Before she could say anything, James walked up with my drink. I smiled and said, "Emily, I'd like you to meet my husband." As soon as Emily saw James, her face went pale. At first, I thought she was just surprised to see me married. After all, she had just asked if I was still single. But then, a moment later, she asked James if he was the owner of X company, and when James said yes he is, she said that you must know my ex-fiance's name, because he works for you. Wow, surprise, surprise. Who would have ever thought that my husband is now my ex-fiance's boss? And it was impossible for someone like Emily, who's always hyper-aware of status and wealth, not to know who James was. I could practically see the gears turning in her head as she pieced it all together. My husband, the man standing casually beside me, was the person who ultimately held her husband's career in his hands. James, of course, was completely unaware of the history between Emily, Ryan, and me. He greeted Emily politely, offering a handshake and a friendly smile. "It's nice to meet you," he said, before excusing himself to grab a drink and chat with someone else. Emily stood there frozen for a moment, her usual poise replaced by something I'd never seen before: vulnerability. She recovered quickly, but her tone was different now, less confident, almost nervous. "You've done well for yourself," she said, forcing a smile. I couldn't resist. I laughed in her face and replied, "I guess we both have." Emily stood there frozen for a second before muttering something about needing a drink and walking away. I saw how uncomfortable our encounter made her. Part of me feels a little guilty for laughing at her discomfort, but another part of me sees it as karma coming full circle. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for laughing in my sister's face when she realized my husband is her husband's boss? OP's sister betrayed OP in one of the most painful ways possible, and she clearly hasn't changed a bit. Laughing in her face might not have been the most diplomatic response, but after what she put OP through, I'd say it was pretty restrained. It's not like OP orchestrated the situation. She just happened to find out the hard way that karma is real. OP should let her sit with the discomfort of knowing the tables have turned. And now let's hear the community's opinion. I can't imagine how hard it must have been to see her again after everything she did to you. Laughing might not have been the kindest reaction, but given the years of pain and betrayal she caused, I think it's understandable. This wasn't about being petty. It was about finally feeling vindicated. You've moved on and built a beautiful life for yourself, and if your sister can't handle seeing that, it's on her, not you. I'm leaning towards not the a-hole, but I can see how your laughter might have come across as harsh. It's clear you've been deeply hurt by Emily's actions, and I can't blame you for feeling some satisfaction in that moment. However, it might have been an opportunity to take the high road and show her you're truly above her pettiness. That said, she had it coming, so I understand why you reacted the way you did. Absolutely not the a-hole. Your sister betrayed you, married your fiancé, and likely thought she won in life. Now she's confronted with the reality that her husband is working for your husband, and she can't handle it. Laughing in her face wasn't petty. It was cathartic. Let her sit with the consequences of her choices. You owe her nothing, not even politeness. For some background, I, 45 female, am an immigrant. For personal reasons, me and my 3 kids, 12 male, 10 male, 8 female, decided to move to the UK. While I was living there, I was lucky enough to obtain an excellent and well-paying job that has given me the opportunity to not only provide for me and my kids, but for my whole family back home as well. In other words, I live rather comfortably. It was just the 4 of us for the first couple of years, until my youngest sister, 21 female, Zoe, decided to move to the UK for university. Since I was her only relative here, we decided it would be best if she moved in with me so she could focus on her education. She has not paid for anything since she got here. I didn't make her pay rent or even groceries. I gave her a weekly allowance since she doesn't have a job. I pay for a majority of her schooling. The rest are paid for by my parents. I had even given her my old car, which I still pay gas for, so she wouldn't need to commute. Our parents do send her some money for other expenses besides university, but for the most part, I paid for everything. Now, our fight happened a few weeks ago, so I might have forgotten some details. I had a serious emergency at work and needed to leave ASAP. I would usually call my babysitter, but she wasn't available for the day, so I had no choice but to turn to Zoe. I begged her to watch them for at least 2 hours, but she declined, saying she didn't want to waste her weekend watching my kids. I was honestly frustrated but was going to let it go, until she said she'd babysit if I paid her. I couldn't stop myself from laughing at her face. I told her that she was selfish for asking me for more money after everything I've done for her, and that she was a witch for weaponizing my situation. She told me that I was being immature and that she had no obligation to help me. We got into a huge screaming match after that. It was so bad that it lasted for 2 days until I had enough and kicked her out. She is now living with a friend, and I am now providing financial aid for university only. We no longer have contact. I feel completely disrespected and used by her actions. Most of my family is on my side, except my dad and older sister. Though they don't agree with what she did, they think I'm overreacting by kicking her out. My sister also thinks that since I'm rich, it wouldn't have affected me if I just paid her, which is true, and that I'm letting my pride ruin my relationship with my sister. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. She was freeloading heavily, and the only thing you asked of her was to watch your kids for 2 hours once, and she couldn't be bothered because she didn't want to waste her weekend watching your kids. And then she says she'll do it if you pay her. You did right to kick her out. She was extremely ungrateful and completely took your hospitality for granted. She's the a-hole, not you. Not the a-hole. Someone who takes everything from you with no gratitude, then refuses to help in an emergency, is a total entitled a-hole. Your kids aren't even that young. Babysitting for a couple hours shouldn't be a huge burden. In fact, you could easily have made it a requirement of her living with you rent-free. She doesn't deserve your support. Not the a-hole. Why are you continuing to pay for her education? This is what happens when somebody is spoiled beyond belief. They become entitled, self-centered a-holes. Your sister said she has no obligation. Well, neither do you, and she needs to know that. I, 25 female, have an average-paying job, doing body piercing, so earn enough to live off. My friend, Lottie, 24 female, who I had been friends with since I was little, did not come from a financially fortunate family and has no job. Extra info: no disabilities, mental disorders, or anything at all to stop her working. Plus, she has a public transport pass. So ever since I got a job, 16 years old, I supported her financially, treating her to meals and trying to help her avoid takeaways from her well-being. I even paid clothes for her when she was 18. I paid for 1/4 of her apartment rent and hair salon appointments. Keep in mind, she is on government benefits. This continued, which is absolutely fine, and she always told me she liked the unemployed life as the reason she didn't work. All was okay until I officially started making more money. 21 years old. I began treating her to more designer clothes and shoes, but nothing like Gucci or Chanel, as a treat for being a good friend. She began to meet a few friends, whom of which never knew her financial situation, I presume, and would only wear her best designer clothes around them, and high heels plus jewelry. I was happy she was wearing them confidently. She started to ask to bring her friends over to my house a lot. I do not know these people, met a few times but not introduced properly, and I was okay with that as I know she was a bit insecure, until it became every single week. One night, she asked to throw a quiet casual gathering at my house while I was at my boyfriend's, which I was entirely fine with. Well, what do I come back to? Beer bottles everywhere, my stuff thrown about the place, my cats scared, my clothes ripped, and multiple of my practice-piercing ears ripped. There were even used tampons in the bathroom floor, and vomit was everywhere. I collected my cats and briefly went to my bedroom, which thank goodness had a lock, whilst waiting for everyone to leave. I heard Lottie and her friend talk. Lottie was talking about how she was grateful that her friends came to her house and that Lottie was making £60,000 a year. She said something along the lines of, "Yes, if you ever need any designer, let me know and I'll buy you some." And that's how I found out all the designer clothes she didn't wear that I bought her were given to her friends. All have jobs. So when everyone left, I was furious. I stormed at her and shouted, "Give me my stuff back and get a effing job. I will not be supplying for you at all, and I want my stuff back. You're an adult and grown up enough to stop acting like I'm your mummy." She refused to give me my stuff back, so I told her if she didn't give me my stuff back, I would tell her friends about it all. So she obliged and started acting the victim by saying, "But I don't want to work." So I told her to get out, and she did. I spent 3 hours cleaning my place, and 2 weeks later, I'm still friends with her, but getting calls from her begging to have money. Everyone in my life thinks I'm an a-hole for this. Update. We aren't friends anymore. Not the a-hole, but girl, if you can go to therapy, because I think it will help you unpack why you let this woman ride your back for so long. What the duck did I just read? Everyone sucks here. She's the a-hole for obviously taking advantage of you for years. You're the a-hole for allowing it. You enabled her. Not the a-hole. She's a lifelong mooch and not your friend. You have no responsibility for her life and financial situation. You never did. Of course she likes the unemployed life and doesn't want to work. She's getting a free ride off the government and your hard work. I will say you kind of set yourself up for this by feeding into her mooching behavior since childhood. But you're both adults now, and able-bodied adults have to work whether we want to or not. That's just life. You really would be doing yourself a favor to cut her, and anyone else who doesn't see what an ungrateful leech she is, out of your life, and find better friends who truly appreciate when you decide to treat them, and don't just constantly have their palms out for your money. My mom and I do not have a good relationship. We used to be close, but she always wanted me to be perfect. She liked to control every aspect of my life, especially my love life. She introduced me to my ex-girlfriend, Kim, and pushed us together. Kim and I dated for a few years and had a child together, which I now have primary custody over. Though my mom wanted our relationship to be perfect, it was far from it. The years I spent with Kim was the worst years of my life, and I'm much happier without her. My mom thought Kim was the perfect girl for me. She was so upset when we broke up and grew angrier when I got together with my wife, Rosa. Rosa is an amazing woman, but my mom refuses to get to know her because she's not Kim. I did not invite my mom to the wedding, and I do not speak to her often. About a week and a half ago, Rosa and I went to dinner at this fancy restaurant. The dinner was supposed to be a nice evening away from everything. In the middle of our date, my mom and Kim come up to us. It was awkward, but I assumed that they would say hello and then leave. My mom and Kim started to chat up Rosa. It was simple questions at first like, "How was work?" or "How was your family?" But even with those questions, I could tell that they weren't really listening. Their questions turned into passive-aggressive comments. My mom was saying, "You look so pretty, dressed like you are single. She's not dressed appropriately for a married woman." Or, "It must have taken you hours to look half decent." I thought it was mean for no reason. Rosa wasn't offended but rather taken aback with how they were acting. She was, rather politely, asking them to leave us alone, but they were not understanding. My mom told Rosa that she couldn't leave us alone because, as a woman, she knew that Rosa needed protection, seeing as she was dressed like a hooker. Kim laughed and agreed with my mom. I was frustrated. They had interrupted us, only to be rude and insult my wife. In frustration, I told them to get the duck out of my face and to never contact me ever again. They left, cursing me out under their breath. We had tried to enjoy the rest of our night, but my mom and Kim had dampened our celebrations. My mom and Kim are still mad at me and want me to apologize. Rosa does not want me to do anything I don't want to, but thinks that this may affect Kim and I's co-parenting situation. Not the a-hole. Good for you for standing up and protecting your wife. I don't think you owe anyone an apology. I think they owe both of you an apology. However, I would try not to escalate the situation since there is a child involved. as your ex could make it very hard on you. Not the a-hole. You owe no apologies, and while Kim is undeniably the mother of your child, I'm pretty sure that that kind of stalking would affect the co-parenting thing, and not in her favor. Also, tell your mom that if she likes Kim so much, why doesn't she marry her? Solves everyone's problems. Not the a-hole. Rosa might be right about pending issues. I strongly recommend keeping notes about everything and recording all calls between you or Rosa and your mom or Kim. In the future, ask the waitstaff or manager to get them away from you. My son was born on my mom's birthday, and I knew from day one it was going to turn into an ugly crap show. My wife felt strongly that our son should not have to share his birthday, and that children come first. I agreed that I would not be prioritizing my mom over my son on his birthday, but without my consent, my wife told my mom that, in a rather aggressive fashion, and my mom said she didn't care, but we better not guilt her for not being available on that day. This has led to a Cold War filled with silent judgment. For his first birthday, my mom did make a brief appearance, but that was it. He is now 6, and every year I feel like everyone hates everyone. My wife makes snarky comments about my mom for celebrating on the day and/or the following Saturday. My sister and her fiancé are cold to me. Last year, there was a blow-up because my mom's husband wanted a logical explanation as to why I couldn't hang out with them when my son was sleeping. I couldn't really rationalize it, so he called me a bunch of names and hung up on me. It is almost their shared birthday, but this one is a big one for my mom, 50, and I really want to be there. I talked to my mom and asked if she would consider moving the date so that I could be there. She told me I was rude, and who even asks that? I explained that my son has to come first, and he is a kid, so it is important that he feels special. My mom said he is my kid, that is my responsibility, and of course she isn't moving her party. I did get a tiny bit emotional about how much I miss her, and I never see her due to the bad blood with my wife. My mom said I was guilt-tripping her, and her birthday isn't about me. She left in a bad mood, and now everyone is furious with me. I've been called sexist. They think I think she should put the kid first because that's what women do. I never said that. Selfish, egomaniac, whipped. I did not think she would take the conversation this badly. Yes, the a-hole. Impossible to know exactly how this started, but from your wording, it sounds like your wife caused all of this because she wanted your child's birthday to be only his. It's not. No birthdays are only one person's day. I am shocked you all didn't think it was awesome and just share the ducking day. What is wrong with you all? Why are you making this a problem? It could have been a fun day for everyone, or a fun 2 days over a couple of weeks. But you and your wife turned it into a childish contest. Yes, the a-hole. Don't be surprised when people cut you off. Why should they be flexible when you are myopically focused on some ridiculous power play? I, 23 female, told my sister, 26 female, that it was not my fault she is still poor. My sister and I have always had a rocky relationship. I love her and I know she loves me, but we have always gone about things differently. When she was 17, she dropped out of high school, has not gotten her GED or finished. She thought she was going to marry the guy who told her not to worry about money. They split up, and she found a minimum wage job and moved into a new apartment. She has since then gotten married to someone who has a child from a previous relationship. I took a different path. I finished high school and received my bachelor's degree. In college, I met my husband, who is now an engineer. Together, we make a sizable income that allows us to be more comfortable. We have only begun in our careers, but from the day my husband announced him finding his well-paying job, it has only gotten worse. One day, we are celebrating my brother's birthday, and my family asks my husband how his job is. He mentions some new things he is learning, tells them about his promotion. My family congratulated him, and we then announced that I had too found a job as a teacher at an elementary school. Once again, my parents and brother are telling us good job and saying how proud they are of us. My sister begins to make a face, and I ask her what's wrong. She said that I am always getting attention and it annoys her. I say I am sorry and go about the evening without mentioning anything again. My parents say they are so happy to have one of their kids graduate as a first-generation college student. My sister rolls her eyes and says she could study something as easy as education too. I simply say, I think you definitely could. I meant it too. I think she is smart, capable, and know she is a determined person. Later that evening, my parents began asking about paying off student loans or if we will buy a house first. During this, my sister has an outburst and said, "This happens every time you are here. They only want to hear about you. The only reason you can think about houses anyways is because you live off your husband's money. I live an hour and a half away from my family. She lives 6 minutes from mom. To me, it felt like she always had the attention. She gave the first grandkid. They have frequent dinners together. It was enough to set me off. Without thinking, I say, I do not get all the attention. You just can't stand when someone else is doing better than you. It is not my fault I chose education and you chose to be poor. I felt guilty as soon as I said it, but I have also been tired of her mentioning how I act better than her because I have a degree and make more money when I have never done so or said it. Am I actually the a-hole here? Everyone sucks here. No one chooses to be poor. Your sister made a bad decision when she was a teen and she's dealing with the consequences. You were hitting below the belt, and I think you know it. On the flip side, it sounds like your sister's mad that she's dealing with the consequences of her actions and taking a bit of that frustration and jealousy out on you, probably because to her, your life looks incredibly cushy and out of reach. Harsh, but not unfair. She's bitter about her poor life choices and wants a patsy to pin the blame on, not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Your sister is digging at you because she's jealous. She can still get her GED and get a college degree if she wants, which it seems she might want to do. She should figure that out and stop lashing out.